Hello, puzzlers. Welcome to the Small Pieces Big Picture podcast, where you get to decide how all of your pieces fit together to create the big picture of your life. I am your host, Jason Wendroff-Ronicki. The problem I see right now is that everyone is telling you what to do. From what you eat, to the exercise routine you follow, what your mindset should be, how you should make your money, what you should do for fun, and the list goes on and on and on. And you are hurting yourself by following someone else's advice. The only person that advice is good for is the person who created it. In this podcast, I will give you food for thought and assignments on different ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. I will leave it up to you to figure out how that fits into the big picture of your life. I encourage you to get back to using your intuition of what's right for you and stop listening to the sound bites of others. All the pieces you need to fit together to be whole are already inside of you. You just need to put them together in your own unique way. So let's get to puzzling. On today's episode, we're going to focus on how to use your strengths. You're going to also learn how you are a completely unique individual and you have to rely on your strengths in order to give your gift to the world. When you're performing or when you want to perform at really high levels, we have to make sure that we are training ourselves into success and greatness rather than training ourselves into mediocrity. So let me give you a little example. I want you to imagine a 5-pointed star. And each of the points on that star represents your strengths. And I'll show you how to find what your strengths are a little bit later. But I want you to imagine the 5 points of the star are what make you great. And then I also want you to see the depressions or the little points on the inside of the star. Those 5 points represent your weaknesses, represents the things that you are not good at, represents the things that you should stay away from. Now, imagine if you tried to get better at the things that you were bad at and not really pay attention to the things that you're already great at. What's going to happen is that the sides of the inside of the star are going to start to pull towards the outside, and it will create a circle, which means that you're not really great at anything, and you have just trained yourself into mediocrity. If you were to spend more time focusing on what you're already good at, and then delegating or finding other people in your surroundings that are good at the things that you're bad at, then you are actually becoming a leader that is going to focus on their greatness and set other people up to also focus on their greatness as well. So let me give you another little story. I'm going to use Michael Jordan as an example, the famous basketball player, but you can use any top line athlete or artist or painter or musician or whatever you want. So imagine Michael Jordan is a high school student and he's already fantastic at basketball. Let's say his parents decide that they were going to pull him out of basketball and put him into soccer because he is not really a great soccer player. And they take all of his time and dedicate his practice time towards getting better at soccer. If his parents were to have done that, he would not be the MVP basketball player that he is currently. He would be a mediocre soccer player and a mediocre basketball player. But the fact is that Michael Jordan decided to dedicate all of his time and effort into improving his basketball game, and which makes him a stupendous athlete. So let's have a little exercise on what this means to you. So I want you to pause the podcast for a moment, go grab a pad and a pen. Now, I want you to take your pen in your dominant hand. So whether you're a righty, it'll be in your right hand. If you're a lefty, in your left hand. Now, when I say go, for the next 30 seconds, you're going to write your first name as many times as possible. Ready, set, go. Just keep writing as fast as you can. "15 more seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. Now, I want you to take your pen in your non-dominant hand, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to write your name as many times as possible in the next 30 seconds. Ready, set, go. Just keep writing. Writing as fast as you can with your non-dominant hand. 15 more seconds to go. Just keep writing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Now I want you to count up how many times you are able to write your first name with your dominant hand, and count how many times you are able to write your name with your non-dominant hand. For many of us, sometimes that number with our dominant hand is almost double, but just notice what it was for you. Notice how frustrating it was to write with your non-dominant hand, and notice how easy it is to write with your dominant hand. Writing with our dominant hand is something that we are strong in. That is using your strengths. Writing with your non-dominant hand is like using your weaknesses. And when we could take the effort to spend months and months and months writing our name with our non-dominant hand until it gets fairly easy. But here's the question. Do you want to spend the time to do that? Or we can continue to write our name with our dominant hand and just move on with our lives and move forward with our lives. So this is the difference between using your strengths and using your weaknesses. So how do you know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are? There's one great way that I've found really helpful for me to identify these things for myself, and it is called the Clifton Strengths Finder. And the Clifton Strengths Finder is an assessment that was created under the leadership of educational psychologist Donald Clifton. And he wanted to identify the skills of the best of the best of the best and to capitalize on them. According to Clifton, psychologists typically study what was wrong with people, not why they excelled. He also identified that successful people had certain personal attributes that benefited them in their work. Now, according to Gallup, the Gallup organization, widely known for its polls and employee selection research, developed numerous semi-structured interviews to identify talent that could be enhanced and used to pursue positive outcomes in work and in schools. And in the 90s, under the leadership of Donald Clifton, Gallup developed the CSV, the Clifton Strengths Finder, as an objective measure of personal talent that could be administered online in less than an hour. The Strengths Finder is a revolutionary tool for measuring talents, and it was first introduced to the world in 2001 with the best-selling book, Now Discover Your Strengths. The updated Strengths Finder 2.0 was later released in 2007 and consistently the hottest-selling book on Amazon. The Clifton Strengths Finder assessment helps identify the areas where you or your team being used in that context have the greatest potential for building strength. It measures recurring patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior. Knowing this information is the starting point. Leadership vision is then able to help individual teams and organizations level their talents and turn them into sustainable strengths. The Clifton Strengths Assessment takes about 45 minutes to take, and they're very, very unique questions that you have to answer in order for the Strengths Finder to find your results. Now, what it's going to tell you is it's going to tell you a list of 34 different strengths in a specific order. So it goes from 1 to 34. The top 5 are your key strengths, and the bottom 5 are your areas in which you're not very strong. So I recommend taking the assessment, which is going to be your assignment for this week, and getting all 34 strengths in their order. Because it is really important not only to know where you excel, but it's also just as important to know your pitfalls so that when you start feeling frustrated or feeling ineffective, you can see how you are engaging in the behaviors of your weaknesses rather than the strengths. So now that we know that the Clifton Strengths Finder analyzes your strengths and that there are 34 different strengths, let's take a look at the math and see how we are completely unique. We are so unique that we are the only one of us that ever is, ever was, or ever will be. And so I'm just going to show you the math about how that really works. So take into account that the world population is about 7.8 billion people. So there's approaching 8 billion people on the world currently right now. So the number of people that have the top 5 strengths, but in a different order, is 1 in 278,000. So you and 278,000 people have the same top 5 strengths in a different order. If you were to take it in the same order, it's 1 in 33.5 million people have the same top 5 strengths that you do in that particular order. When you move it to 6 places, it's 1 in 1.5 million people have the same top 6 strengths that you do in a different order. When you want to put it in the same order, it's 1 in 1 billion. So right then and there, just talking about the top 6 strengths, 1 in 1 billion people have the same top 6 strengths in that same order. Now let's add on number 7 in a different order is 1 in 5.4 million. The same top 7 strengths in the same order is 1 in 27 billion. So right there, just going to 7 places, not to 34, you're 1 in 27 billion. So that's already 3 times the amount of people that exist in the world right now. Now, if you add the 8th place, so the same top 8 strengths that you have in a different order is 1 in 18 million, and the same top 8 strengths in the same order is 1 in 732 billion. So that just indicates that you are unique. You are the most unique person that ever was, ever is, and ever will be. And every time you go into your bottom strengths, you are depriving this world of the gift that you have to give to it. Gallup found that the more time you spend focusing on your strengths, the more energy you have, the happier you are, the more you smile and you laugh throughout the course of your day. And inversely, the lower your stress levels and worry levels and your pain levels all decrease when you focus on your strengths. So it is one of the most important reasons to focus on your strengths is to improve your happiness so that you can be more joyful, that you can be more alive and spend less time in stress, worry, and pain. And science proves that when you feel better, you do better in all areas of your life. When you spend more time in your top 10 strengths, your energy will be higher. You'll have the ability to influence other people. You're going to be creative and productive and connect with others in a more substantial way. But when you spend time in your bottom 5, your energy is going to just drop like a rock. You're going to have little influence on other people. You're going to be very static and inefficient and disconnected from other people. So if you feel that you're spinning your wheels and that you're putting a lot of effort but not getting a lot of results, then chances are is that you're engaging in your bottom strengths and not your top strengths. So let's go over the 4 different categories of strengths, because each strength is classified in one of 4 different ways. So there are 4 different classes of strengths. There's the relationship building strengths, there's the influencing strengths, there's the execution strengths, and there's strategic thinking strengths. And so each of these categories of strengths has a certain thing that they're really good at. So I want you to see which one of these categories you identify with. Maybe you identify with one or more, which is possible, and see how you connect with them. So with the relationship building strengths, it's all about connecting with the right people. So if you feel that your whole way of being, the way you're the happiest is connecting with people, you have probably some relationship building strengths in your top 5 or your top 10. The second classification is influencing strengths. And the pull of influencers are to move people forward. So are you that kind of people who love to see people succeed and people grow and people expand? If that's the case, then you probably have some influencing strengths in your top 5 or top 10. Then there's the strategic thinking category, which focuses on thinking, creating, and learning. So if you love to sit and daydream and think and create and expand and learn different things, and then you probably have some strategic thinking in your top 5 or 10. And then there's the executing strength, and their primary focus is doing things in the right way. So if you have a very, very critical way of judging people and judging systems and that kind of stuff, you have some executing strengths in your top 5 or your top 10. It doesn't matter what your strengths are. We can perform at high levels with any strengths in any order. The challenge is to make sure that you're engaging in those strengths and you will be able to perform at the highest level possible. So I'm going to go over my top 5 strengths and tell you a little bit about each of those strengths and the classifications they fit into. So my top strength is winning others over, or woo. And it is an influencing strength, and people who are talented in the woo theme love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. They derive satisfaction from breaking the ice and making connections with another person. So that is the top. I love to be in parties. I love to have small talk with people. I love to meet new people and literally try to win them over. And I did an experiment where I try to stand in a line at a shop and not talk to anybody. And it was absolutely impossible for me not to do that. I had to communicate and connect with people I didn't even know, because when I'm in my strengths, I love to talk to new people and try to win them over. And that is an influencing strength. The second strength I have is positivity, which is a relationship building strength. It's about connecting to other people. And people who are talented in the positivity theme have an enthusiasm that is contagious. They're upbeat and they can get others excited about what they're going to do, which is so great that it works in conjunction with my woo, because I am completely a positive person. That's part of the reason why I have decided to do this podcast, so that I can spread my positivity while trying to win you over. So they work really well for me, and it's exactly who I am. And my number 3 strength is communication, which is another influencing strength about moving people forward. And people who are especially talented in the communication theme generally find it easy to put their thoughts into words. And they're good conversationalists and presenters, which is why I am here on a podcast presenting this information to you. My 4th strength is ideation, which is a strategic thinking strength. It's about thinking, creating, and learning. And people who are especially talented in the ideation theme are fascinated by ideas. They are able to find connections between seemingly disparate phenomena. And that is one thing that I absolutely love to do with my private clients, is I find those connections that people can't see for themselves, so that when they're struggled with their belief systems, or with their eating patterns, or with their exercise routines, or with their lifestyle, I can find those connections that they really have trouble seeing for themselves. So that is the ideation theme, and that is one of the things that really makes me who I am. And my 5th strength is responsibility, which is an executing theme. And people who are talented in the responsibility theme take psychological ownership of what they say they will do. They are committed to stable values such as honesty and loyalty, right? And that is so probably one of the most important things for me, is that when I meet people or when I work with different companies, honesty, integrity, loyalty, ethics, these are all things that I value highly. So if you look at my 5 strengths, I have 2 influencing strengths, 1 relationship building strength, 1 strategic thinking strength, and 1 executing strength. So I have one of those 4 different categories in each of my top 5 strengths, leaning a little bit more heavily on the influencing category. Now that you have seen where I am the strongest, we also have to take a look at where I get into my pitfalls. And so we have to go to the bottom 5 strengths, from strength number 30 to number 34, to see where I always get in trouble, because it's just as important to know that as it is to recognize when you're in your power and in your strength. And every time I feel anger and frustration, I'm realizing that I'm engaging in these bottom 5 strengths. And my number 30 strength is analytical. And people who are talented in the analytical theme search for reasons and causes, and they have the ability to think about all the factors that might affect a situation. So when I start to go into a downward spiral of the reasons why I can't do something, I know I'm getting into my analytical mind, and that is a place I have to cut off as quickly as possible, because if I spend too much time in that analytical area, then I get frustrated, I get less efficient, I start disconnecting from people. Like when I was about to release this podcast, I was getting really critical of myself about all the reasons why I couldn't put this podcast on. So I had to make sure I got out of that and got into this area of, why can I do this? Why should I do this? My number 31 is consistency. And so for people who are talented in consistency, are keenly aware of the need to treat people the same. They try to treat everyone in the world with consistency by setting up clear rules and adhering to them. And I always say consistency is definitely not one of my strong suits, and I am very aware of that. I am all about breaking the rules and doing things a little bit differently. So this actually, if I decide that, or I see myself treating people as not as individuals, then I know that I am engaging in my consistency and that I need to, once again, move back into my strengths and stay out of this area. Number 32 is context. And so it's thinking about the past and understanding the present by researching my history. So every time I use the past in making decisions for my future, I get into trouble. So I really have to make sure that I'm staying very present and being future thinking rather than thinking of the past. Number 33 is competition. So people who are especially talented in the competition theme measure their progress against the performance of others. They strive to win first place and revel in contests. And I so know that this is not me. I can perform really well as long as I'm not competing against someone else or competing for a prize. And every time I even get into business competitions, I have to remember that the competition doesn't matter. And I have a little mantra for myself when I find myself getting into the competition, and AKA Meatball's way, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So the competition for me, I always have to remind myself, the competition, it just doesn't matter. I just have to move back into my responsibility and my ethics and my integrity, and that will allow me to succeed, not the competition, because competition is very low for me, and anytime I engage myself in competition, I do not succeed. And my lowest strength is my deliberativeness. And people who are especially talented in the deliberative theme are best described by the serious care that they take in making decisions or choices. And they anticipate all of the obstacles that get in the way. And so when I start doing this, when I start even creating obstacles that don't really exist, I know I'm being deliberative with myself, and I have to realize that I can make choices very quickly, and based on the information that I'm given, my decisions are accurate when I make them. So here's your assignment for today. I want you to go to Gallup.com, and I'll put the link in the liner notes. And I want you to take the Clifton Strengths Assessment. Now, I highly recommend getting the full assessment with the full 34 strengths. But if you just want to get the top 5, that's okay. You can do that as well. But I highly recommend getting all 34 strengths so you can see not just your top 5 or your top 10, but the bottom 5 as well, because that's where you fall into those pitfalls I was mentioning earlier. Once you have your results on your Clifton Strengths Assessment, then I want you to create a strength statement, and I'm going to explain how to do that. So I want you to take the top either 5 or 10 that you have and calculate how many strengths that you have in the relationship building category, the strategic thinking category, the influencing category, and the executing category. And I want you to tally up those numbers. So if you're using your top 10, if you have 3 or more strengths in a particular category, that is a theme in which you need to focus. And so we're going to create a strength statement using your dominant themes. So you're going to write down, here's your strength statement. I love to do everything in a way that honors my desire to. I'm going to repeat that again. I love to do everything in a way that honors my desire to. If you have if you have 3 or more executing strengths, it'll read, I love to do everything in a way that honors my desire to do things in the right way. If you have 3 or more influencing strengths, it's going to read, I love to do everything in a way that honors my desire to move people forward. If you have 3 or more relationship building strengths, it's going to read, I love to do everything in a way that honors my desire to connect with the right people. And if you have 3 or more strategic thinking strengths, it's going to read, I love to do everything in a way that honors my desire to think, create, and learn. Now, for me, I have 3 strengths in the influencing, 3 strengths in the relationship building, and 3 strengths in the strategic thinking. So my strength statement reads, I love to do everything in a way that honors my desire to move people forward by connecting with the right people to think, create, and learn. So depending on how many strengths that you have in your top 10 will depend on how many of those qualifiers you have in your strengths statement. Now, if you're only doing the top 5, then you can use 1 in each so you can see which works for you. So the best way to do it is using your top 10 strengths and then creating your strengths statement from that. So if you're looking to get better results in your life, make sure you're using your strengths because they will work, but only 100% of the time. That's what I've got for you today. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next episode. If you're enjoying this podcast, there's 2 things that you can do for me. One is you can write me a 5-star review. So however you're listening to this podcast, if you could just review this podcast and let me know what you like about it. If you don't feel like you can give me a 5-star review, please email me directly and let me know what I can do to change either the subject matter or tweak the presentation. And then this way I will personally read the email and I will send you back some information based on your feedback. So that would be really helpful. The other thing is if you could head over to my Patreon page, the link is in the liner notes, and just donate a couple dollars a month to help me to create this great content so that you can really be inspired to put your pieces back together or put them together for the first time to really live more holistically, more happily, more joyfully. That would be amazing. Thank you very much for your support, and I'll see you at the next episode.